All right, here we go. Yelawolf, welcome back to VladTV. It's been way too long.
Yeah, man, been a long time. You said, what,
Hey,
13
man, listen.
years?
13 years. I think so.
It's a lifetime.
I think so. And listen, man, it's a lifetime. Congratulations on the grind and the success you've had since that time, especially on the indie circuit. Because, you know, not every artist manages to transition from independent from a major, but you've absolutely done it and you've excelled at it. So congrats on that. Well, we've done other interviews in the past, but I want to get your whole story this time around. So let's start on the very beginning. So you were born in Gadsden, Alabama?
Yeah, Gadsden, Alabama. Yeah, small town, east of Birmingham, west of Atlanta. Yeah, working class town.
Okay, but you ended up moving to Antioch, Tennessee.
Antioch was a lily pad, yeah, for sure. I spent my formidable years in Antioch, where I first started writing, putting pen to paper. But I moved around from within Alabama, Gadsden, Fort Payne, Center, then to Franklin, South Franklin, and then to Antioch to Atlanta, back to Alabama. Just, you know, moving around a lot, just chasing it with mom. But yeah, like 15 different schools, and we just we moved around a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned mom. Were you raised by just your mom or both your parents?
Yeah, well, I did live with my grandparents for some years, and then but yeah, it was mostly just me and my mom. I ended up going back to my grandparents' house when I was like 17 or 18 for just a little bit before I left again, and kind of like never looked back after that.
Okay, so did you keep a relationship with your dad, or your dad wasn't around?
No, I met my natural father when I was 16 or 17, but we didn't hit it off. So, but one of my mom's long-term boyfriends, Jim Garner, he became a father figure, and of course my grandfather, my papa, was always, you know, the mainstay father figure. But yeah, me and my dad, we didn't kick it.
Why did 16 or 17 years pass without you actually meeting your dad?
Shit, because he's a piece of shit. I don't know, like, you know, like, he's just a deadbeat dad. And then my mom, you know, she was gangster about it. You know, she didn't allow, you know, that energy to be around me, you know. But we were, you know, we were off. She had long-term relationships, you know, that we were moving around with. First it was John Orchard, and that was Center, Alabama, and Fort Payne, and that whole scene, when he was doing light and sound for like Alabama and the June Jam and Ted Nugent, Aerosmith, and all that shit. And then when she separated from him, she got married to David Longwill, who was Randy Travis's stage manager. So we ended up in Nashville, or Antioch, and so that's where we were for a stint. And then and it was from there we went to Atlanta, Georgia, with Jim Garner.
Okay, so your mom had relationships with musical guys the whole time?
Yeah, yeah, always, yeah. And during my childhood, like,
okay,
yeah, you know, me as a kid, and then as a teenager, yeah, it was always music guys.
So as a teenager, were you a relatively good kid, or were you getting in trouble, getting arrested, that type of thing?
As a teenager, I was buck wild, you know, like skateboarding in the streets and, you know, all the things, you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll, running from the police, you know. Look, thankfully, I never got caught. I did get caught as I got older. I've been to jail a few times, but never as a teenager. I didn't go to juvenile, thank God. But yeah, I was a pretty decent kid up until like about like 10 or 11. I started becoming pretty mischievous, you know what I mean, and getting into the dark shit, you know. And about 12, 13, I was already smoking weed and fucking running around the streets skateboarding.
So at what point did you start looking at music and thinking, okay, I might be able to do this?
Music?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, specifically, well, hip hop, like, like 92, 93 kind of was a really influential, those 2 years were really influential as far as my like attraction to MCing, you know what I mean? Like listening to Souls of Mischief, you know what I mean? And early DJ SNS tapes and Diggable Planets, you know, Outkast, Goody Mob, all, you know, 3 6 Mafia out of Nashville. All those things were kind of blending alongside the rock and roll and the country music that was already like embedded into my life because of my mom's relationships. Um, uh, and so I just, you know, I just started emulating rappers, of course, at first. Then, you know, freestyling and overdubbing over instrumentals in my homie's room and kind of figuring it out. Then I just put pen to paper for some years. I just wrote verses, like thousands of verses. You know, never recorded anything, kind of just like shadow boxing with wordplay. And yeah, I was like, I think I was 18 or 19 when I went off when I was in Berkeley, California. I had like just took off to Berkeley and like squatting at, you know, squatting at frat houses with a bunch of skate heads and skate houses and at Food Not Bombs every day. It was like a charitable, like, you know, food for the homeless. That's where we would eat. It was trite, but it was kind of then where I had a job working the streets, like giving away samples and shit. And I ran into a big tour bus, had Def Jam plastered across it, and I just skated up to it and introduced myself. And it happened to be Lev and Will Hawkins from the Grill Recording Studios in Oakland. So they invited me out to hear what I had the next day, and you know, it was clear that they were they expressed real interest in my talent, you know, and was trying to nurture me, you know what I mean? But I was too unhinged to lock down for anything serious, you know what I mean? And at that time I didn't really understand songwriting, but I knew I had something, but ego kind of ego fed my talent, you know what I mean? Like it was like I knew I could be, I didn't know how I was going to be and where that was going to click. It would be some years later where I had to go back and, you know, live in the trailer park in Alabama, Huntsville, you know, where culturally it started to make sense for me, you know, and up until that point it was just wordplay and learning how to be an MC. But as far as like creating a story and creating a character to carry that story, that would take years, you know what I mean? So I had to go through a lot more to figure out how to map it out. I just grew up on MCs that and artists that were inspiring me to be a part of that scene. It used to be so compartmentalized, like Atlanta was Atlanta, New York was New York, Texas had Suave House, West Coast was Dre, and you know, Tennessee was 3 6, and all these sounds of because, you know, up until that point, it was hard to share music and sound, like not like today where you can just immediately hear someone from New York or from the South like instantly, and you're starting to share and blend sounds. Back then it was, you know, it's just like you didn't hear it unless you were really there. And so really unique sounds were being created, and that's where I wanted to develop for myself. Like, what am I going to carry into the game? Like, what is my purpose? I mean, yeah, I have skill as an MC, but what am I doing? Why am I here? You know what I mean? And so that was things started to click, you know. That's when I developed, you know, like created the Catfish Billy character and, you know, all that shit that came out of the trailer park and the streets of Gadsden, South 11th, Walnut Park. And yeah, just my style started to come together. My image started to come together. How I was going to like present myself. The pieces started to come together.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Berkeley right around 97, 98. I was actually there. because I
Really?
went to school at UC. Yeah, I went to school at UC Berkeley, and that was when I really kind of started my hip hop career. Because you would see rappers like Souls of Mischief and Dell and Casual and Richie Rich and Too Short, kind of all in the area, and it made it seem real for the first time. And what you're saying is actually kind of interesting about how regionally things were kind of broken up, because I remember when I interviewed Organized Noise, rest in peace, Rico, who just passed, and I was the first person I think to ever bring it up to him. But I said, when the first time I heard Outkast, they kind of sound like Souls of Mischief. They're like, exactly, that's actually true. They did kind of sound like Souls of Mischief initially, because they were such a big influence on that sound. And Atlanta was kind of developing a new sound during that time and taking bits and pieces from other areas. So yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm at the age where I remember when the first Outkast album dropped, and I remember when the first single dropped, and me and my friends were listening to it, and it was like we didn't see it yet. You know what I mean? Because honestly, the way they were rapping at that time, and I'm living in the Bay Area at the time.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded us of like Souls of Mischief, right? You said it.
Yeah, we know.
We were saying Souls of Mischief, and we were saying Far Side.
Yep.
It was like these guys kind of sound like that. It sounded like a West Coast backpack style.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's crazy how you guys were getting the same thing. I thought this was just a private conversation.
We kind of knew it, but we wasn't mad at it because we kind of liked those kids. But
Absolutely.
we love Souls of Mischief. We love that song. Like we love the Far Side, because we knew that they were West Coast, but they weren't gang banging, and that was the only thing that was holding back some of the other West Coast stuff, like or whatever. So we felt like they were cool. You know what I'm saying? That was the reason why you couldn't touch. It wasn't tangible, some of that West Coast, because you felt like you couldn't identify with them or whatever. These cats was like being different, being eclectic, being artists or whatever. Like, and they thought process was good or whatever. Now, the fact that Outkast, that was something that, with anybody, you want to be able to be yourself. So like, yes, you would. We tried to make sure that wasn't in those projects, but yes, you heard a little influence of the Souls of Mischief on Andre's little vibe.
And they were young.
They were 17,
You know what
so
I mean?
it was almost like they was finding themselves or whatever. Like so it's like and probably paying compliments to
Right.
what they like or whatever, but not realizing that you are competing with these people right now. Like one of the songs when Big Boy might have said it reminded me of Snoop or whatever. Like, but they don't really but you guys are coming out at the same time. But really, these cats might be 18 or 19. You 17, really. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so that's what. But that's why when you saying it, yeah, it never really came up throughout their career. But we knew that.
You and I may have actually walked past each other at some point
That'd be
during that
crazy.
time. If you were skating on Telegraph Ave.
Oh yeah, 510 skate shop.
Yeah. No, I used to, my man Will Dog, who formed the group Oatley, he was a skater and he was hanging out during that time. And yeah, I was in the scene, making beats and DJing and everything. Yeah, so small world. Okay, well, at one point, you ended up being homeless in Seattle, working as a fisherman.
Yeah. Well, I actually left Berkeley, like, fuck skateboarding, fuck all this. I'm gonna go tackle this music shit. And then I went back to Gadsden, and my grandparents, my papa, they moved him. He worked at Goodyear, but they had moved him to another state. They were on strike or something, and he went to work somewhere else. And so my grandparents left me with the house through that right before Christmas, actually, and Christmas of 2000. And so I'm 19, and my boy hits me up and tells me that we can go to Seattle and get on a boat and make 20 G's in 1 month. And to me, that was like $1 million. So I would have done anything for it, and I did. So I jumped on a Greyhound bus, the wrong Greyhound, but that's a whole story in itself. But the short of the long is I went to Seattle, and then slept on the streets until I got into a hostel. Like when I mean sleep on the streets, I mean sleeping under a church awning in the snow of New Year's night of 2000. Like looking at the needle, I remember all that shit. And but befriended some other kids who were kind of on the same mission. There's a lot of kids that go out there on that mission. It's kind of like, you know, I don't know, like the gutter Peter Pan trip or some shit. There's just a lot of like misfits that are out in Seattle, kids that are chasing this idea. But little did we all know that's a gate-kept job. We did end up, after weeks out there, I ended up getting a job on a jump boat, basically. But I did go out for a full season and yeah, grinded and brought home, I think, $1,000. I think I had like $400 by the time I got back to Gadsden. Trife. But that's where like Yelawolf was really like that was all came together. You know, that trip kind of kicked my ass. I got all the karma fed right back to me for all the dirt. It was then I decided like that there's no more street shit in my life. I was over it. I had done enough. And I was lucky to have survived that trip, to be honest. Yeah, I took myself to the edge, literally, to the edge of the boat and all that shit, like just really dug deep out there. But you know, when you're working like sometimes 26-hour shifts in the middle of the winter, the Bering Sea, you know what I mean? It's like waves bigger than your boat, like it's gnarly. It's fucked up out there, you know? So it's you're like risking your life for real. And so yeah, I came back stronger for sure, you know? But I've always been that way, man. Like as far as grinding and doing any kind of job, any kind of work to make it happen, it was just, you know, I was willing to do anything. I didn't give myself a plan B.
I mean, when you look at that era of your life, being homeless, not having any money, doing whatever it takes, you actually compare it to hustle and flow. What do you think was the absolute worst situation you ever found yourself in?
Well, there's been a lot of bad situations that, you know, before I became a father, but those situations were, you know, and I'm, you know, like food stamps or like, you know, roach infested apartments and fucking just super gutter shit. But when you don't have the responsibility of kids, it's easier to handle, you know what I mean? I think the worst situation I've ever been in personally was just like having to boil water for a hot bath for my kids, you know, like no heat in the winter, like bundled up in the tub and shit, just real fucking way low shit, you know, like the whole era of food stamps in my life, you know, like that humiliating period. And it wasn't for lack of working. I was working, but you know, you just didn't make enough. You never could make enough. And I'm very like hungry, you know, for more. I've always wanted better for myself and for my kids, of course. So I think that era of my life was the toughest. And you know, there was that last bit where I did Trump music in that house in Walnut Park, where again we didn't have heat in the house, you know, and I just said fuck it. I just spray painted the walls of my house. Success, you know. I just kind of I clicked out, you know. We had done a project already, and L.A. Reid passed on it. There was a project called Arena Rap, and I did that project with Malay, like, we were kind of given an ultimatum. Either I was going to do a rap project or I was going to walk, and there would be no deal. So Malay said, fuck that, I'm going to LA, and he did. He went to LA and did Frank Ocean's Grammy Award winning album. And I fucking went to Walnut Park and did Trump music. And that was the tipping point.
Right around 2005, you were on the UPN reality series, The Road to Stardom, with Missy Elliott. And then you end up getting eliminated from the show. And after that, you came out with your first, independent album, Creekwater?
No, like the Road to Stardom thing was just got word that there was an audition for the next hip hop superstar, right, in Atlanta. So I took my bars up there and stood in line and performed in front of the judges or whatever, and I made a made the cut in New York. And then I got on the show and it was like being hoodwinked, you know what I mean? Like there was like they were feeding us terrible, just reality show bullshit situations, and I just wasn't with it. And then finally they gave me some track, some beat that they said Dallas Austin made. I didn't believe it. It was terrible. So I called him out about it at dinner and in front of Missy. And so, yeah, so they kicked me off the show that next episode just because they just knew I wasn't going. I just wasn't going for it. I wasn't. But I'm the only person to come up out of that for sure, you know. But yeah, it was those producers. I saw them. I was with Busta Rhymes in L.A. For some like relief for some party for that show, and he picked me up and hugged me. I fucking love you, dog. You know, giving me all the love and shit. And the producers walked over, and they're like, "We're so sorry." And I knew what they did. You know, they took an audio of my vocal performance with the beat and they shifted it so that I would be off beat, and said I didn't have rhythm and I wasn't the guy or whatever, which is impossible for me to rap off beat. Literally impossible. Like I couldn't make myself rap off beat. Like, so they apologized. It's all good. And, you know, that's just a part of my story. So yeah, I came back to Gadsden with something to prove, I felt like, but I still hadn't found my voice, to be honest. I haven't even cracked that monotone thing that I was afraid to be too pitchy. I was afraid of some comparison to Marshall. I was afraid to be basically to snap. So I got on my MPC 2000 and wrote and produced Creekwater. And yet again, man, just like a failed attempt, really. My boy, rest in peace, Wayne Bush, gave me money to press 5,000 copies, which is a fucking lot. You don't even understand how much that's a lot when you're looking at pallets of CDs and jewel case CDs, the big ones. Right. And trying to push those on the streets in Gadsden and Birmingham, Alabama, forget it. It wasn't what it needed to be. It's too heady, too monotone. And I still had a lot of proving grounds in the streets before I was going to be let in anyway. So I went and figured it out.
Okay, so you came out with Creekwater in 2005. Like you said, it didn't really do a lot. And then you put out a mixtape, Pushin A Barrel of Bees.
Didn't do a lot. It didn't do anything. Let's be blunt.
Didn't do anything.
It didn't move the needle at all.
Right. Well, 5,000, listen, as someone who used to... Yeah, no, listen, as someone who used to press up, you know, mixtapes, mix CDs, yes, 5,000 is a lot. I fully understand how crazy of an amount that is, especially if you don't have a track record of already selling. So yeah, you really kind of threw it all on the table and unfortunately didn't work out, but it's just part of your story.
Yeah, like I had already done music with Willpower and you know, I pressed up 1,000 and I slang 1,000 out the trunk by myself, you know, like literally just drove around. Just if it was hood enough, I would pull up in the gas station and, you know, hustle. So 5,000 was a lot, but yeah, yeah, that was, you know, a piece of it, part of it.
Okay, and then your mixtape, Pushin A Barrel of Bees, came out, and did that move the needle at all or not really?
That was after. Yeah. It moved artistically. It did for me, because like I cracked that voice. You know, my voice started to come together, and what I was talking about. And at the time, I was living at a trailer park in Huntsville, Graceland Estates trailer park in Huntsville, Alabama, and the studio was like a couple streets over in this guy's house named Jim. And Jim owned a mattress company called Mattress Express, and I worked for his company during the day and recorded at his spot at night. And yeah, that's that's where I found a new level, you know, a new level of something. I don't know. Did it move the needle? Nah, hell no. I had it wasn't until I went to Atlanta, you know. And I recorded records off of Pushin A Barrel. That was just like mixtape, like exercise, you know, like again, like shadow boxing. Um, Off the record though, I stumbled upon this concept. Um, well, it's just like everything just kind of fucking like came together, you know. And I wrote this record called White Boy from Alabama. And I just kept it so insanely literal about my situation and where I was at and who I was, who my family was, you know what I mean? Like where I was really, really from and being shameless about everything, you know what I mean? And I knew that I had to take that idea and that personality and go to Atlanta because I had connections in Atlanta already. And Grip Plies, rest in peace. He let me come live with him and his mom, and I slept on his couch and got a job at Bulldog Movers and then started hitting the underground scene in Atlanta. Um, and that's where more of the development started to happen.
Okay, because in 2007, which is 2 years after you dropped that album Mixtape, you end up getting signed to Columbia Records.
Yeah, that was
now,
that.
Was this before or after Atlanta?
Well, I went to Atlanta and hooked up with Scapezilla somehow. I think it was through Witch Doctor. I don't know, Witch Doctor from Dungeon Family. And ended up with Scapezilla and writing this record called Kickin'. And I knew at that point exactly what I needed to be, what I needed to look like, what I needed to talk about, how I needed to talk about it. You know, RC Cola mesh hats, you know, taking photos with catfish off a chain, like in front of a box Chevy. I had it mapped out. I knew what my character was and how I was going to present and represent where I was from. And so we stumbled upon that record Kickin'. And we were already raising hell around the underground with Fucking Awesome, and you know, we pulling up to shows. Like I was leading the pack, you know, like pulling up in like mossy oak jumpsuits with bright orange beanies and throwing fishing lures into the crowd and like just taking it there, you know what I mean? Like being fully out there with it because it was working. I could see it clicking. And so Courtney Seals and Kawan Prather, alongside my homie J. Jones, who was my manager at the time, they pulled me out of a show after a show one time in Atlanta, and I performed right in front of Kawan Prather in like a dance studio. It was just me. I had a big deer, like my homie was wearing this big deer costume, and I was wearing like mossy oak, and you know, I had the whole thing down, and I did Kickin', and I covered Paul Revere with my own lyrics, and I was throwing fishing lures and shit all over the room, and KP was like, "I'm in." So yeah, we went up to New York and inked a deal with Columbia through Ghetto Vision.
Okay, so you signed a deal with Columbia. You put out Kickin'. It was supposed to be from an album called Fear and Loathing in Small Time USA, but that album was never released, and you ended up getting dropped from the label.
Yeah, we got within months, Rick Rubin became the president of Columbia and cleaned house. Like he just got rid of everybody, you know. And I never met Rick Rubin. You know, I was told that he didn't like my music or he didn't like what I was doing. But honestly, I don't know if I've really believed that. I think that the crew that got me in the door wasn't gonna let me go or release me to Columbia because they brought me there. You know what I mean? And that's just a theory. I don't know. I actually don't know the real truth about that situation. All I know is I was back at Gassed and broke, and that's after getting signed, being on the front of the fucking paper of Gadsden Times, which was a huge deal to me because it was a big stunt. You know, I was like, I made it. Just kidding. Nope. Back to the gutter. So I had to figure it out again, man. Go fucking try to figure it out. So yeah, I went out to somehow I forget in the string of networking and all that shit. I had made the cover of Ozone magazine. Like I was in like the center of the O. Not they would split the cover with two artists. The bigger artist had the actual cover, and then they would feature a little artist in the O, and I had that. And I made it down. We did this I think it was the Ballad of Slick Ricky Bobby mixtape that I don't know that I did in Atlanta. But anyway, I was like nominated for an award, and that's where I met DJ Ideal. And we did Stereo, which was a hip hop tribute to classic rock. And again, these are just like pieces that started to add into what would become, you know, the Interscope Shady artist, you know what I mean? Like, but there's a lot of creative moving parts and a lot of exercises that had to happen to put it all together. It was you know, it's like getting your master's degree.
Well, by 2009, you end up signing to Ghetto Vision Entertainment, which was an imprint of LaFace. And Ghetto Vision had like T.I.'s first album, Young Blood's, the Big Boy solo album. So now you're kind of in the mix with some of the trendsetters in hip hop.
Yeah, well, J-Dot and I knew that Kawan Prather was gonna get it. And thankfully we also had Courtney Seals, C-Bear, co-managing with J-Dot. We just had a really strong team, and you know, KP really believed in it, you know, on the hip hop side of it, you know. He didn't too much, I don't think he too much dug the rock and roll aspect of it. He was just more interested in the 808, like hip hop, like Southern hip hop shit. But, you know, I did that really well. And, you know, I was good on stage. I was good around other artists, good around other stars. And, you know, it was just all coming together. And so it was just trial and error after that, man, like figuring out the sound. And yeah, so I locked in with Malay shortly after. And we started working on Arena Rap. That's a crazy story because Arena Rap, I think 5 of the records that were cut in 07, 08 ended up being on Love Story, my sophomore album. And we didn't even recut it. We just mixed it. And then everybody's like, oh, it's a game changer. It's like, dude, we were way ahead of the curve, you know, like, but we knew that. We just weren't, the world wasn't though. People, they couldn't digest it. It was too much. Too much rock, too much country, too much hip hop, you know, all done really, really well. And like, it was just like, what the fuck is this? This is not, I mean, that's why LA passed on it, you know? And we were doing, we made like the creative loafing best live act of the year, you know, with that crew, you know, sold out show. I had like 2,000 people, like Fantasia on stage twerking. And like, you know, I had hair down to my waist and boots and, you know, black fiddle player, fucking white boy with a mohawk playing banjo, fucking Malay was over there on like lap steel and bass, and like it was just such, it was like a culture bomb, you know what I mean? Like it was like, it just brought it all together. But you know, LA passed on it, and I heard Lil Wayne was there and Khaled was there at that show, but it didn't, like, we didn't couldn't pull the deal out of it with that music.
Well, I mean, you dropped arena rap and you're signed to Ghetto Vision, like I said, and you started actually getting different placements. You were kind of like the go-to rock hook guy during this time. You know, you're doing stuff for Slim Thug, Joel Santana, Big
Well,
Boy. So you were getting your kind of major placements, but not as a solo artist yet.
dude, when I did that record for Slim Thug, it was the Flock of Seagulls cover with Jim Johnson. Jim was just like, man, you got to come out to Texas uh, for these award shows. Jim's always been a huge fan and a supporter, and he's just always tried to keep me in the mix, you know, and I didn't have any money at the time. So he flew me out to Texas. Some shit started going down at the award show, some street shit. He's like, fuck it, let's get out of here and go to the studio. I'm supposed to be working with Slim Thug. Slim Thug wasn't there, but I cut that uh, I Run hook for the Flock of Seagulls cover for Slim Thug. It became a hit for him. And I was so broke and so off the scene, I couldn't afford to make it to the video. And so Jim Johnson is like lip singing my part in that video. And but word got around when I was in Atlanta that that was me. And so Joel Santana uh through KP had hit me up to do Subterranean Blues by Bob Dylan, mixing up the medicine, and that became a big record for him. And so then after that, Big Boy hit me up for a rock hook, and that's when uh, I just kind of like stood on my square, like I'm not gonna be that guy. Like, you know, I'm not gonna turn into this guy. I like basically begged Big Boy. I was like, dude, please just let me rap on this record. And he's like, nah, shawty, 3000 made this beat. And I was like, come on, man, just give me a chance. So I ended up talking him into it. And I sent back like 38 bars, like just a whole fucking onslaught of lyrics. And that ended up being Your DJ Ain't No DJ. And that really changed the perception, you know what I mean, of me as an MC. And like, I'm so thankful for Big Boy for that. You know, he did not have to do that, but he gave me a chance, and it was a big deal, man. He put me out there. Big Boy was my first like actual real MC cosign, and publicly, you know. Uh, so it struck, you know. I did what came before that though? It wasn't. Nah, we didn't even do Trump Music yet, did we?
That came later. I was about to mention that. So Trunk Music came in 2010, and that's when things started to kind of move for you, I feel.
Yeah.
Okay, so you dropped Trunk Music. That started to take off. You started to get a real like following behind that. And then later that year, you end up signing your second record deal with Interscope Records this time around.
Yeah.
Now, what was different about the Interscope deal than the Columbia deal?
Well, there's a lot different from Interscope, from a lot of different fucking record labels. You know, that wasn't my first stop. You know what I mean? Like, I had been in the office with quite a few people, but at this point, man, I had been through so much that I didn't give a fuck anymore about who anybody was or how much money they had. I was so broke, and like, I mean, like broken. I was broken as an artist, and the power of that enter button to send Pop the Trunk to the world by myself, and to get it going on our own, and shoot a $5,000 music video, and you know what I mean, all the power that we had, like I stopped caring about being a part of a system. So the difference was, we went out to South by Southwest and fucked shit up like all weekend. And Todd Parker, um, uh, who was working with Geffen and Jimmy as an A&R, was just following me around every single show. And I liked his energy. You know what I mean? It was like, he would say shit like, I will rape and pillage for you. I will murder the world for you. I will do anything for you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he was like, he was passionate, and he was like, he would speak affirmations, like, you're going to be the greatest to ever live, dog. I promise you. You got to come with us. You got to come with us. So that I had never felt that energy before, you know what I mean? But we were doing something extremely different, like at that time, South by Southwest, it had a hip hop scene, but it wasn't that big, you know what I mean? Like it was still pretty boutique, and we were fucking raging, mosh pits, stage diving, and that hadn't been done at that point in hip hop. Like that image, like that mullet mohawk, fucking shirt off, sweating, raging, like it's like a punk rock show. So all that swell of energy and all those stories that combined into this like artist, like truthfully like just broken and raging. And so I didn't give a fuck anymore. I was not going to tap dance for some CEO. I've done all the tap dancing I was ever going to do. And so after that weekend, Jimmy Iovine flew me to his house directly. I went from the airport to his house and sat in his living room. And the difference is Jimmy was like, it was Todd Parker and Luke Wood. Luke Wood was running Geffen, and they're sitting, and Jimmy sitting next to me, Bear, KP, J-Dot. And he's like, listen, man, we're not going to do all that tap dancing shit. I heard what happened to you. All right. And he was referring to other situations. He said, I heard what happened to you over there at Def Jam. We'll move like that over here. He's like, Luke Wood, bring me the checkbook. And he was like, literally about to cut me a check right there. And I was like, no, that's all good, man. Like, I appreciate you even taking the initiative to do that. That was enough for me. He's like, man, we're not, he's one thing he said to me that was like, the most important is like, he said, we're not here to change whatever you got going on. You need to keep doing what you're doing. We're just here to refuel your tank and help you to stay out there. We're a place to come dock, refill your tank, and go out and get it. And that made sense to me. And I respected his creative past, him engineering Fleetwood Mac and, all that, man. That I knew his history, and long history. And let's be real, I knew the ties with Shady. And, I had a Eminem's demo, one of Eminem's demo tapes that I stole from a record label that I was trying to put in his hands. So I had my own aspirations, my own vision. I knew what was going to happen because I wanted it to happen, and I was going to fight for it to happen. I wasn't going to stop till I got to Marshall.
Well, yeah, because here you are about to sign to Interscope, and Interscope is also the home of Shady Aftermath. So how much time passed between you signing the deal to Interscope, to the point of you actually signing to Shady? Because there was like kind of rumblings like, oh, okay, this Yelawolf kid might be signed to Shady. And then you saw the XXL cover, and it had Eminem, you, and Slaughterhouse, who just got signed as well. So how did that whole thing come together?
How it came together, I don't know. I just showed up in Detroit and, you know, chopped it up with Marshall and Paul. And, you know, I was told that it was gonna happen. Uh, you know, honestly, I don't think I ever saw a contract. I think that deal was done between Interscope and Shady as partners. I just agreed to it, you know, and you know yeah, like how it happened on the back end, I don't know, but for me, I manifested that shit, you know, literally. And like I said, if it wasn't gonna happen, if it wasn't gonna be a suggestion from them, from their side, then I would have pushed that agenda on my own. Because I knew that Marshall would understand it. I knew he would get it. I mean, it was just inevitable, you know? It's like, it's perfect.
Well, you had been a Marshall Mathers Eminem fan for probably as long as I have, because I remember hearing some of your interviews of, you know, the old Raucous projects. And I remember when Eminem was making the buzz kind of on the indie scene, on like the vinyl scene. And I remember I got the EP and then like the Raucous appearance here and the Bad versus Evil, you know, 12-inch. And it was like, it was so clear how much better Eminem was than everyone else during that time. It was just, the skill level was just instantly obvious. And, you know, being a white kid in hip hop, it's like, yeah, I mean, you had the Beastie Boys, you had Third Base, you know, you had Milkbone and a bunch of other random, you know, white rappers along the way, but Eminem in Too Deep, exactly. But Eminem, the skill level was just above everyone else. Just strictly rhyming and putting words together. So what was that first meeting like with Eminem?
What was the first meeting like?
Yeah.
He walked around the corner reciting every word to Pop the Trunk without even saying what's up. He just was rapping it. Mind blowing, man. You know? I mean, I was, you know, like any other, you know, white boy that was chasing this, so to speak, you know, this hip hop dream. You know, it was crushing to have, you know, this to not be represented correctly. You know what I mean? Like what always wanted a representative, you know what I mean? Like somebody has to get this correct in a major way. And he did. And you know, for me, I was just proud. I was like, yes, because it meant I had a chance. Watching his success meant I had a chance because he kicked the door down. But you had to be a fucking beast. You know what I mean? You had to be a beast. And I wanted to be an ally, you know, and not on the receiving end of a battle or anything like that. I never wanted that, you know. I wanted to join that, you know what I mean, and get the cosign, and I set out to do that. But yeah, it was surreal. But at the same time, like if you would have asked me, you know, 10 years before, are you gonna sign to Shady? I would have just been like, fuck yeah. Watch. You know? I mean, it's that ego thing, man, you know, like that. I held on to it. That demo tape I found of his 10 years before. By the way, he overdubbed an Into Deep tape, classic Eminem. And he would hand those tapes to labels and shit. I found it, put it in my back pocket, and I set out to put it in his hands, and I did that very thing. So yeah, it was surreal, but also it was it almost immediately I was like, what else? What else am I gonna do? You know, like what next? I after broing down with him and like, you know what I mean, having a really great meeting and a conversation with him, I think I jumped right back in the car. I was like, man, let's do an album immediately. And so we did, man. We went out to Vegas, parked it at Molly Malls, wrote a record with Molly Mall, Pooh Bear, you know, Willpower. show back up a couple months later with an album done. So I'm always on to the next, man. Like I'm never complacent or really satisfied. That's a blessing and a curse. More of a blessing than it is a curse, but I'm just on to the next, you know? I don't fan out on anybody.
Eminem had signed other artists leading up to this. He had signed Obi Trice. He, of course, signed 50 Cent, D12. But you were the first white artist signed to Shady Records. So that kind of created its own aura in and of itself, where suddenly everyone, you know, how you described it, everyone came out of the woodwork, everyone wanted to work with you, every writer, every producer, everything else like that. What was that like exactly?
I mean, I wish people would have just left me the fuck alone, to be honest, for the most part. You know, it wasn't like that, how I made it to Marshall and how that happened, that was like, it was for me to explore and exploit, you know, in the way that I thought was best creatively. There was so many people got in the way of that, man. So many like uninvited ideas, you know, it was just, I tell people the best way to describe that situation was like, if you've ever seen Wayne's World and they got this great underground basement show that everyone loves, and then they get picked up by this big corporation, and now it's a studio, now they've changed the logo, they've changed your theme song, it's all fucking dolled up, and it's like all these people are trying to get involved, and it fucks up the core creative side of it. So that freshman album honestly was difficult to get through creatively. And you know, hindsight, it's 2020, but you know, and the perfect scenario would have been like, oh, we inked a deal, cool. Me and Willpower lock in Atlanta and do Trump Music Part 2. That's the first album that needs to come out, you know? So, you know, they wanted to redistribute Pop the Trunk and Daddy's Lambo and all those things. So they put out Trump Music 0 to 60, leading up to the freshman album that would be Radioactive. And by the time 0 60 was popping around, you know, it was like Radioactive was, yeah, like everybody wanted to be a part of that album. And because I was a new artist and, you know, I didn't want to disappoint or certainly didn't want to argue or fight with any of my, you know, senseis, so to speak, I allowed ideas to come through, and I would try things. And, you know, a lot of those ideas didn't work. They didn't like translate, you know? And we got a lot of critical acclaim over Radioactive, but there was just a few songs on there that I detest, you know what I'm saying? And they weren't my ideas. They were not my ideas. They were not my production. I rapped on them because I was told it was going to be a big hit. But you know, no one wants to hear Metallica sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, bro. You know, like it's like it, sometimes, you know, like I knew my fan base, I knew what fan base I was building. I could see them at the show. I knew the breed, you know what I mean? The Slamerican idea that was being planted. And so the blessing of that record and some of those records are incredible. Like there are songs on Radioactive that are timeless and that I cherish, you know what I mean? It was just some of those big single attempts that I felt like weren't necessary, you know? But it gave me the creative ability and creative freedom to do Love Story. You know what I'm saying? Like, so my sophomore album was the most important album of my career, I think, to this day. Like, it may not be like, it doesn't always, record sales and shit doesn't always mean that it's the most important album of your career. A lot of times, like, you do a project and you gain so much more out of the reception of the creative side of it and the accolades, and it can mean so much more than record sales, you know, that like it's like more tickets through the door after that album, you know, big festivals, you know, like my life changed after that record. And it was just because I was let loose. But then again, I had to go through Radioactive to even click into that person, you know?
Okay. And, you know, right around that time, you were on the cover of the XXL freshman issue. And that has an interesting lineup.
Yeah, man.
Kendrick Lamar, Meek Mill, Sci-Hi the Prince, Diggy Simmons, Mac Miller, Fred the Godson, Lil Twist, Big Crit, Lil B, and YG, and you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting lineup, man. Like, there's a lot of successful artists came out of that crew. Rest in peace, Mac Miller,
Yeah.
by the way. Hey, my
Yeah,
dude.
that
That was my dude, man.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That was my homie. And we never did music together, man, but we were always like in communication. You know? We just had that kind of relationship, man. It's like big bro shit. Miss him, dude.
Yeah, he was dope. I was actually the first website to actually feature one of his music videos. I forgot the name of it, but it was like this video with like this red umbrella that was just so dope. This was way before he put out his first project. And you could just tell how talented he was early on.
He's just a kid, man. Like, it's unbelievable, actually. But
Yeah.
he was a blessing, man. We were lucky to have him.
Yep. Well, you put that out. You know, you put out Radioactive, and then you kind of had some interesting projects that next year. You and Ed Sheeran actually had a collab EP, Slumdon Bridge.
Yeah, you know, I didn't know who Ed Sheeran was at the time. Well, I mean, but to be fair, he was doing like 300, 400 cap rooms at the time, like if that. I don't think he was doing even that in the States quite yet. But the word that I was given was like, hey, there's a kid named Ed Sheeran just signed. We got a lot of, you know, faith in this kid, and he wants to come over and do a record with you're his favorite rapper. And I was like in LA, like, I don't know what I was hanging out with Travis Barker or some shit, and we had just done a bunch of interviews, and Jada was like, hey man, we got to slide through the studio. We got to meet this kid, Ed Sheeran. I was like, who? Why? You know, like, who is this kid? Like, oh no, he's a big fan. He just got signed. Trust me, it's a good move. It's a good move. It's like, all right, man. Well, I walked through the studio and like instantly got along with him, and hadn't heard any of his music before I stepped in the studio, and so we vibed. We vibed immediately. We cut like 5 records during that session. Cut 5 ideas, and then then became the biggest artist in the world. And
right.
And
it's crazy.
Yeah, I know. And I didn't see him again in person till last Slump Fest, which was 4 years ago.
About 4, yeah.
About 4 years ago, he popped up at one of my shows. That's the only time I've seen him again. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, he became an absolute monster. Like he does massive stadiums at this point.
Yeah. I guess I'm like a warlock. I'm just ding. Just blessed him.
Okay, so yep. So I mean, you had a few other projects. You dropped the EP with Travis Barker, Psycho White.
Yeah.
You and DJ Paul had a collab EP together, Black Fall.
Yeah.
And then in 2015, you released Love Story.
Well, we're missing Trump Music. Trump Music 3?
2.
Trump Music 2? No. That what?
Did you say Trump Music?
Trump Music 3 was before Love Story. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Because we did
Trunk Music. Trunk Music Returns came out before.
Yeah, Trump Music Returns. Yeah.
Trump Music 3 was
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Trump Music Returns. Yeah, it was the part 2. Yeah, you're right. Well, because Love Story, because Tennessee Love, we cut on Trump Music Returns, which became the seed to Love Story. Yeah.
Right. And then Love Story comes out in 2015, and that becomes your most successful project. with Till It's Gone going platinum for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
How did that feel to finally have, and this came out number 3 on Billboard. Till It's Gone, goes platinum. Best Friend with Eminem also went platinum. The album goes gold. How did it feel to finally get the commercial success after working at it for decades?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't really, of course I was happy, you know what I mean? Like I had moments of like, oh, this is tight, but the crowds just got bigger. You know what I mean? The shows got bigger. But I was more into cultivating like the Slamerican culture, you know what I mean? Like that the whole idea of like when we did Tennessee Love before we stepped in the studio to cut Love Story, I had Robbie Turner come in there and do lap steel over this record. And Robbie Turner played with Johnny Cash, everybody. He's played with everybody. He's a legendary lap steel player. Pedal steel. And I was kicking it with Joshua Headley at the time, and Joshua would show up in cowboy boots, and I kept like, I was like, man, and this is why we're cutting Trump Music Returns. I was like, dude, like, I think I'm ready for that phase in my life, man. I think I'm ready to take it there. Like, I can bring this to hip hop like it's never been done before. I saw something, I saw the leather jackets and the full brimmed hats and the snakeskin cowboy boots and the Harleys and the whiskey and dive bars and that whole thing that was happening in my life. I wanted for it to translate visually alongside of this record. And that to me was the focus. I wasn't focused on what the numbers were. I was more in tune with the fan base. The most important part, really. I just wanting them to understand the evolution of Yelawolf and how I got to that point. And it wasn't just a fucking costume. These things were pieces of my history, you know what I mean? And pieces of my musical history. And it was a blend of, another thing that I wanted to bring back and make clear is this is core hip hop, really. If you look at like 70s street fashion in New York, 78, 79, that's all this really is. This, the denim vests, the leather jackets, the hats, the boots. You can look it up. I was just blending those styles, and then also with the country and rock and all that. But the fashion side of it was a real huge piece of everything, really. You know what I mean? Like everything kind of coming together perfectly, and it let me loose. It let me loose from sneakers. You know what I mean? From tennis shoes and. Like a certain thing. I didn't have to be a certain thing anymore. It was that shit was a wrap. I found my freedom. You know what I mean? Like, and that's a great, I take a great deal of inspiration from, like Andre 3000 and as an artist that I watched like gracefully do anything he wanted to do, and I wanted to bring that to my own career because I am that.
Well, you have said that you and Bubba Sparks were some of the pioneers that kind of fused, country music and rap music. You look at kind of where it's going these days. For example, Old Town Road became the first #1 country song done by a hip hop artist, if you want to call him that. And now you see, for example, for the first time in my lifetime, country music is actually dominating the charts to the point where Beyonce dropped a country album. How do you feel, like from your point of view, as someone that's been doing it for a while, how do you feel about how country music is being embraced right now in hip hop?
I think it's great, you know? I think that, look, man, there's enough to go around in music. I don't feel like there's any gatekeeper to any genre, and anyone should be allowed to do anything they want to do. I'll just say that for the record. I don't care if you're a hip hop artist and you want to go do some country, or you're a country artist that wants to go do some rap shit, like whatever. Feel free. You know, because if you can pull it off, more power to you. It's difficult. You know what I mean? And so, you know, look, man, I've been friends with Jelly Roll for over 20 years, you know? And I took Jelly Roll on tour with me twice and to open for me. And look what's happened with Jelly, you know? And I think, you know, and Jelly's got Slamerican tattooed down his arm. You know, that's how core we are, you know? And then when he went on tour, what did he do? He took me and 3 6 Mafia with him. You know, the same package that I had at Slumfest. Me, Jelly, DJ Paul, Gangsta Boo. You know, he took that formula and made it acceptable for the world. And, you know, he's kicked down a lot of doors for that to happen, you know? So, you know, I've been a part of the story for a lot of artists, you know, been weaving in and out of artists' lives, you know, and then I've seen a lot of artists just take off, from Ed Sheeran to Jelly Roll, you know. We're doing shows with Kendrick Lamar in Atlanta, watching that happen, you know, and then B.O.B., you know what I mean? Like, there's been a lot, you know, and I there's more. I just don't want to sit here and go down the line, but to see what's happening with country music now, as it pertains to my influence, I don't know, man. I think like all roads, you know, they do lead back to one place. You know what I mean? And I just happen to be an exit off of that map that was, people stopped in a lot, you know? They came and got gas. You know what I'm saying? They jumped off my exit, they got gas, and they kept it moving. And but I'm proud of that, you know? Not everybody checked in, but a great deal did, you know? And yeah, I'm very proud of that. But, you know, I jumped off exits on my own, too, for my own influence. It's just, I brought a certain influence to the game that was new. Where I was grabbing my influences were very unique. Like my chopping, like all that jump on the patio bike like a Pakistani, get back in the Mac 11, all that wordplay. That I got that from bluegrass, man. That's hanging out at Foggy Hollow with my uncles watching bigger, you know what I mean? All that double time shit. I just added syllables and wordplay to it. So there was that part, and then my melodies were coming from deep classic rock and old Motown and, like, you know, and country, you know? So it's like, it took a while to bring it all together, but when it came together right. But, you know, as far as, you know, like country hip hop goes, I mean, like Les Roll, it may have sparked some shit, but you can close the book at Trial by Fire, because after I put that record out, like that, you know, I said all I had to say about that whole genre. And, you know, I tipped my hat to it, and I just kept it moving. I was over it.
Okay, so Radioactive, which was executive produced by Eminem, you know, had a lot of dope features on it. I mean, Eminem did a song with
Gangsta Boo, rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Rest in peace. Oh, that killed me. I just hung out with her 2 weeks before. That shit killed me, man. I mean, Mystical, Kid Rock. And I guess you and Eminem had a big argument over Kid Rock being on that song.
Nah, you got that fucked up. That is
well, not an argument,
not
but
no, we
wasn't
did not
there
have
some
an
sort
argument
of
about. We did not have an argument. First of all, we didn't have an argument. Secondly, it wasn't about Kid Rock being on a song. We had a heated discussion about who should mix the record, and you know, and that was it, you know. But we came to terms and we got the fucking thing done. It wasn't like I just disagreed on like some mixing shit, you know, some vocal mixing and some musical mixes shit that I felt like needed to happen. And
got it.
that's it. You know, you know, like when we put two creatives in a room, it's bound to happen at some point. You're gonna disagree on something, whether it's a hi-hat, a snare drum, a kick drum. And Marshall's passionate, and rightfully so. This dude's fucking, you know, had hit after hit after hit. So who am I to argue? But yet again, I still have my own art I gotta stand on, you know? And I'm also passionate, and sometimes, you know, you have to find that balance. And but no, it wasn't about Kid Rock being on the song. When he asked me who I'd like to work with, is there anybody I'd like to work with? I'm sitting with him in Detroit. I said, honestly, Kid Rock. And Marshall and Paul took me to Bob's house in Detroit. You know, he's like, oh, Bob, let's go. You know, as we went and broke bread. Me, Marshall, and Bob, you know, we ate. So like Kid Rock was a no-brainer. So we just ended up having a heated discussion about the mix. But you know, all is well that ends well, man. You know, that record was really well received, and honestly, it changed a lot as far as like hip hop and country and rock. You know, the perception of that and where it actually could go. You know, but to that point, they hadn't had an MC enter that world like that. And so yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you what else I had a fucking heated conversation with the label about that video. And so we shot the whole first part of that video in Harlem. Me, Bob, and Kool Herc riding around in a Cadillac, was supposed to, you know, like celebrating hip hop. When I got the edit back, I was like, dog, I can't, this is my first single. I can't be in Harlem. I'm from Alabama. Now we could be partly in Harlem, but I gotta go to Alabama. No, no budget, no budget, my ass. I was like, yo, clear my bank account. And I had like $50,000 left in my bank account at the time. And I spent every penny to pay that production crew to come to Alabama and shoot the rest of that video. Thank God I did, man. Because without the imagery of that mud bogging scene and you know, the lifted you know, limousine around the dirt track, you know, being at 231 with Shawty Fat, my whole crew, like, it made the video. And yet again, stand on your feet, man. When it's time to make a decision as an artist, if I could give any advice to any artist coming up, you know, just believe in your vision, man, and go for it. At the end of the day, like, all is well that ends well. That, you know, you just got to remind yourself of that. You know, like, they will get it. You just got to push sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, that became, in terms of Spotify streams, that's the biggest song on that album, Let's Roll. It's at almost 50 million streams right now. I mean, it actually did better than the Eminem song with Gangsta
15 million streams?
Yeah.
No. Best Friend's bigger than Let's Roll. There's no fucking way. Best Friend it's got to be bigger than Let's Roll. Well, how about Make You Love Me is performing better than all of it.
Well, hold on. Best Friend isn't on Radioactive.
Oh yeah, I know. Oh, you're talking about off that album.
Off that album.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because I remember you did an interview on ESPN where you talked about some of the struggles you had with alcoholism. And the Trial by Fire tour didn't go so well. So at one point during the Oregon show, you were destroying some equipment. That was Belonging, that belonged to Bones Owens. You guys had a fallout. DJ Clever left the band. And then there was an altercation in Sacramento, and you ended up canceling the rest of the tour. There was like 7 dates left. And they're saying that after the tour, you had a mental breakdown and your ex-manager forced you into a psych ward. How much of this is accurate that I just said?
It's all 100% accurate. Every bit of it.
100%.
Yeah, so like, I quit drinking and started smoking weed, you know, thinking that that was going to suffice. But as it turns, man, I just started losing it slowly, you know? And that's because I have like bipolar tendencies, man. You know, like my manager and I, like, we say professionally bipolar, creatively schizophrenic. You know what I mean? Like, but that's part of my superpower, you know what I mean? But if I'm not careful with that, which I was very careless with it while I was smoking all that weed and not just anything. I'm not talking about just flower. I'm talking about dabs, pens, anything. Just very careless about what I was putting into my body. It was making me psych out. And my friends started noticing it. And all I was doing was smoking and skateboarding at that point. That's all I wanted to do. Before the show, it was all skateboarding, all just smoking. And yeah, man, if you just slightly upset me, it was like manic, you know? And so yeah, Bones and Clever, we fell out because of that stint. And then when I finally, I gave some kid like 10 G's for a C10, like a 67 C10 or some shit, and a trade. And then I got off. The first thing I did was quit riding a bus. And I drove that lowrider all the way to Hollywood. And I was just wilding, man. Just wilding in Hollywood, like crazy shit. I'm lucky to be alive. Like holding up traffic, like in my lowrider on Sunset, like not letting anyone pass. And like daring someone to say something. And someone did, jumped out and chased him, like yelling at police and shit, like fuck crazy shit, man. Just kind of out there. And then there's one video that really, or there's a couple, but there's one video that says a lot about my mental state. And that was what was the video we cut with DJ Paul that you shot?
Get Away.
Yeah. The song's called Get Away. Ironically, because my brother and I are so spiritually tied, he was like, yo, man, I just pulled up. And this is after like all the shit I just pulled on Sunset. So I'm on one. And he's like, oh, I want you to, there's a scene where I want you to bury somebody. And I was like, oh, I know who I'm fucking burying. I'm burying Yelawolf. I'm over this shit. So I wrote my name, Yelawolf, on a piece of paper and threw it in a grave. And you could see me in that video, like, burying it, because I was done, man. I was like, this is gone too far, you know. Everything's gone too far. I felt like at the time, at least. But keep in mind, I was checked out, you know. And I just yeah, we had that show, and Jelly was actually on that tour, Jelly and Struggle. And it took a while, actually, to mend that relationship back after dropping that tour, because it meant a lot to them. And you know, I had to personally pull up and apologize to my brothers, you know what I mean? That was sometime later. But anyway, I called my boy Danny Way, and I was like, hey, he's a pro skater. I don't know if you're familiar with Danny Way, but legendary. Mm-hmm. But I called him, and I was like, hey, man, I'm pulling up. Pulled my bus up to his house. I was like, man, just hold me down for a while. So he's got a compound, right? And no one's allowed in there. And so again, all I was doing was just smoking and skateboarding, like everywhere, going to his like training facility and skating and smoking. And my mom was with me at the time. And then I started bloodletting, which is like you know, you cut yourself with a razor somewhere on your skin, and then you bloodlet to it's like a Native American practice, you know, it's like it's supposed to help release, you know what I mean? Release shit, you know what I mean? Which is probably why I'm addicted to getting tattoos as well. You know what I mean? Like the pain is part of my process, you know? But anyway, word got out that I was suicidal, which is not at all true. But I was scaring people. I was scaring people that love me. And my dad got sent out to Jim Garner. He got sent out to San Francisco, or no, Seattle. No, where the fuck? Oh, San Diego. San Diego. And cause Travis Barker called Paul and said, "Hey, man, something's wrong with Wolf, man. You know, like something's not right." And something wasn't right. And my dad pulled up. I was at the skate shop in San Diego, and someone asked me, because I started putting blood on like white Vans and like making art out of it, basically, which they ripped, by the way, around the corner. They designed that shoe. Like blood splotch on a white tennis shoe, on a white slip-on. My mom has those shoes, by the way. And someone asked, they bought a pair of white Vans for me and asked me to bloodlet over it in front of the shop. And like a perfect storm, here comes my dad out of nowhere and 4 cop cars. And it was just like, I couldn't have like convinced them that I wasn't suicidal. I couldn't convince them that there was like blood on the ground, bro. You know what I mean? And a bandage around my hand. So they arrested me and took me to the psych ward. And, you know, I sat up in that motherfucker for 4 days. Like a Green Day video. Like real shit. Scrubs, padded rooms, you know, the whole 9. So I kicked my own ass.
Well, yeah, you said in the psych ward they tried to break me and feed me drugs for 72 hours against my will. I lost everything and lost 95% of every so-called friend and business associate during my stay.
Yeah. Yeah, I lost everyone's faith in me, you know what I mean? Including a great deal of fans. I think I lost like over 150,000 followers overnight. Crazy shit, man. And I had to set out and rebuild and figure shit out. So I did. I came back to Nashville, and they weren't gonna put my record out until I went to rehab. So I went to rehab. I told them that I was a alcoholic, but my secret was I hadn't drank alcohol in almost over a year. So I got hammered drunk right before I was supposed to go into rehab, so I would have it on my breath, because I didn't want them to send me to a psych section. I was like, man, just put me with the alcoholics. I don't want to hang out with no emo suicidal fools, because I wasn't suicidal and I knew what they were going to do. And they did have them houses out there. They had like, we call it the sad house. So you had people who were suicidal. They all hung out with each other. Alcoholics hung out with each other. You know, sex addicts, they hung out in another house. You know, it was like all these houses. So I chilled with the alcoholics for my stint, like 30-something days. Got fat on lasagna and donuts. And did my time, dude. And then they fucking agreed to put my record out. I would have never went to rehab.
I mean, this was 2016.
I did this strictly to get my record out. Trust me. That's the only reason I went to rehab.
But when you look at your life right now, do you feel that you still have struggles with addiction, or do you think you're good now?
I don't have struggles with my addiction at this point in my life, because I've redirected it. You know what I mean? I still drink and have fun, but the 90% of the bandwidth of my addiction goes to making music and fashion and, you know, running Slamerican and Creekwater and producing all these other artists now and signing young talent. And, you know, I like my boy Steve Malbin said, like addiction can be a good thing if you can direct it correctly. I think that most, like Tiger Woods, I would say clearly is an addict, you know what I mean? But he's focused his addiction into golf, you know what I mean? Like things like that. Like any person is like masterful at what they do has targeted their addiction toward their art. Marshall, you know what I mean? I am definitely an addict for sure. But you know, it's just about finding ways to feed that, because you're not gonna shake it. You're not gonna never not. You're once an addict, always. That's why they say like I'm in recovery. Motherfucker's been like 20 years sober, and they're like, yeah, I'm in recovery, because you're never not an addict. So I just redirect that, you know, into something that's more productive. And yeah, my mental health is as good as it's ever been. You know, I've rekindled all of my relationships. Not only rekindled all of my relationships, I've made new ones. You know, I have a great crew, you know, great family of friends. And yeah, you know, I've added shit in my life that has helped me to spend my downtime, which, you know, they say idle hands, devil's playground. So my new playground is a golf course. I don't skateboard much anymore, but I'm out on the golf course all the time. And that's opened up a whole new chapter of my life, to be honest. Playing tournaments now. I played Troubadour the other day with Jelly Roll, you know, sponsored by Malbin, Callaway Golf Clubs. Like, you know, that I have truly become addicted to as well. So, got tee time tomorrow. Let's go.
Oh yeah, no, I just started playing golf myself in the past year. And I remember I was at Boosie's house, and he actually has putting greens on his estate, and he doesn't play golf. So I'm like, yo, you got to try this. Like, you're missing out. It's a whole thing.
He's got putting greens on his estate, but he doesn't golf.
He
bought it with it came with the house.
No, he built it all himself.
He built it.
Yes,
that's
but
hilarious.
he doesn't play golf.
Oh,
yeah.
that's funny.
But that's just Boosie. He also has 3 pools, and he wants 1 pool just for himself. He doesn't want anyone else to swim in it. So, you know.
That's incredible.
Boosie's Boosie. Yeah. I'll send you a video of the that we did on his estate after we're done here. You'll get a kick out of it. Okay. So after canceling the Trial by Fire tour, you actually ended up redoing the tour. You call it the 5150 tour, and you actually made up the dates that you missed out on, and you actually, you know, everyone who bought a ticket, they were able to go for free. So you actually made all that right.
Yeah. And my mom come to see me while I was, you know, she was the only one allowed in the, at the psych ward in San Diego. Well, the first and second floor, but when they sent me up to the 3rd floor, it was a wrap. The only reason they sent me to the 3rd floor is because I wouldn't take medicine and shit. But my mom came in, and I said, don't worry, I'm going to turn this 5150 thing into a business. And I did, you know, for real. I turned it into a whole thing under the Slamerican umbrella. I drew a pattern, a 5150 flower pattern. That was inspired by the scrubs that I was there. And the 5150 flower pattern is now like, you know, it's our logo, you know? It's like our all over print. And shit, I got the socks on right now. It's crazy. But yeah, and then also like when I share the story with people how that happened, you know, like I started doing the 5150 flower tattoos on other people, you know, that may have been through the same story, or maybe they were just inspired by it. So I've tattooed a lot of 5150 flowers on friends and fans, family, because really it is as dark as it is really a beautiful story, because like from what came out of it, you know what I mean? It's like a phoenix from the ashes, man. Like I really broke down to nothing, and then was given all the blessings of a rebirth, and, you know, figuring out that next chapter. So really a lot of great things happen from it. And I'm back with Clever, and Bones is doing great, you know what I mean? We're still homies. He's got a great solo career. Clever's out here in Nashville, and yeah, man, I was with him last night. You know, back doing shows, doing what we do.
Okay, so then in 2018, you dropped the Bloody Sunday freestyle, where you dissed Post Malone and G-Eazy.
Yeah.
Why'd you diss these two?
Well, like, first of all, I may have been misinformed at the time about Post, but I was told, I'm not going to say from whom, but he denied or shunned someone who was very close to me at a party in Hollywood. And that person is a major figure in my life musically, and also a very important person culturally. And it was just told to me that he didn't want to work with me and him. And I was offended because, well, I'm a part of Post's story too, from different angles. You know what I'm saying? And I was a fan, and so I was really working toward working with him. And when it didn't happen, I was like, okay, all right. And at hindsight's 2020, man. Like I might have been misinformed, but I went after it because I was just there. I was there. The G-Eazy diss was just because he said he was the greatest white boy since the one with dyed blonde hair. And I was signed to Shady at the time. Like, what are you talking about? Like, if you was, you'd be here, you know? So went after him, went after a local artist out of Gadsden, Clever. And then at the end, I said, when Trump music drops, Trump Music 3, bro, you're gonna know how I feel about MGK. Because I had a feature. I had a feature with MGK. You know, we had already done Rowdy. You know what I mean? So I was setting that up. But, you know, I kicked it with, Post Malone's been doing a record behind my studio here in Nashville. And I just walked out and kicked it with them and talked. We talked for like an hour, drank some beers, drank some whiskey, exchanged numbers. And we kick it, you know what I mean? Like, it's all good. You know, like, it's not like, you know, it's just water under the bridge. I mean, at some point, it is music, it is hip hop, it is competition. And Post fired back. He just fired back with a post, you know, like, he said some shit like, you know, like I was a nerd or some shit. You know, I don't know what he said.
Well,
but
I actually pulled it up. He said, also, Yelawolf is a nerd, and this tweet is the only support I'll offer his album. Also, Yelawolf, please show me all your Chill Bill shit, please. Last I heard, you was talking about how you wanted your shit like mine. I have a couple lenders. Don't worry, hit me up, Dad.
Dad. My homeboys still call me Dad to this day. Oh, man, that's good. Yeah, Chill Bill. Chill Bill's a chain stitching artist out of LA that I had went to and started doing all my shit with. Like early, definitely before Post, but I just made that part of the diss. I don't really give a shit, and I'm happy for Chill Bill. But yeah, that's funny. That's funny, Dad. Nah, but we kicked it, and yeah, shit. It's all good. It's really all good with all of them. You know, to be honest, like that. If there was a moment to come back, then that would have been the moment, and you know, whatever. Post shot back with a post. I didn't hear anything from G-Eazy. Didn't hear anything from Clever. I didn't hear anything from anybody, you know, except for Post. And that was good enough.
Yeah, Post is dope too, man. You can't deny the talent level of Post Malone.
Of course not, man. But you can't deny the talent level of me either. You know what I mean? So what's up?
There you go. Okay,
nah, we're
now
boys, dude. It's all good.
There you go.
And
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. And it wasn't until I seen Post
by the
Malone
way,
perform.
I gifted him a I just pulled up with, like, my company's around the corner from the studio, Slim American, where we produce all our clothing. And I hooked up with a huge box, and then I put a like a one-off Manuel chain stitch jacket in the box. like a baller ass jacket. You know what I mean? If you know about Manuel, I mean, like he made suits for the Jackson 5, Elton John, you know, Johnny Cash. I mean, his son, you know, they made the suit Johnny Cash was buried in, so it was a real, you know what I mean, like peace offering. And the irony of the diss, but then like gifting him with the very thing that I put in the diss. You know what I mean? I thought that was like the, you know, full circle of that.
Okay, so you and MGK, I guess that there was some sort of beef that started around 2011 over the BET Cypher freestyle?
No, that's not how that
No,
started.
that's not true?
Nah.
Okay, so how did it start?
Man, he was just a kid at the time. I mean, you know, this was fucking 12, 13 years ago, maybe more. And I was coming up and I was on Warped Tour at the time, you know, and I saw a video clip of him saying something to the effect of, no one needs to be throwing water bottles or headbanging or mosh pitting but me. And that was everything I was doing, you know, on Warped Tour. And I think he mentioned Warped Tour. So I got on Bootleg Kev's radio show, fresh off of hearing that and seeing that, and called him out about it. But we never took it to record, you know. And I saw him at a trade show like a few months later, and he was like, "Yo, can we talk for a minute?" And we did. We talked, and it was all good. It was over right after that discussion. And some years later, DJ Paul was like, "Yo, me, you, Marshall, and MGK need to do a song, man. And, you know, this is it." So we played Rowdy, and I sent it to MGK with my verse on it. And then we sent it to Marshall. And you know, it was crickets from Marshall. I didn't know what was going on, but like you know, at the time. But that was the original intent for that song. That put me in a real odd situation. But you know, it's all good. I was just kicking it with MGK 3 nights ago, writing me, Jelly Roll, Kasky, MGK, you know, writing a record for Jelly and MGK.
Well, yeah, you're working on this record with DJ Paul, and Paul had the idea to put you, Eminem, and MGK on the song. Like you said it to Eminem. Eminem never responded. And then Eminem drops a diss record against MGK.
Yeah.
And then MGK fires back. And, you know, I mean, it's interesting. It was an interesting beef. You know, for example, I had The Game, you know, come in and do an interview recently. And this is like the king of rap beef. He's had beef with every rapper almost on the face of the earth since he started. And I had him kind of go through, you know, we went through all the major rap beefs. So when I got to this one, Eminem versus MGK, he said, honestly, I think MGK won that one. Eminem versus Machine Gun Kelly, 2018.
You know what? People get mad, you know what I'm saying, when you say shit about Eminem or you talk about Eminem, but I mean, I gotta get out to Machine Gun Kelly.
Really?
You know what's crazy is, I didn't think, I don't know, man, I feel like the old Eminem was just deadly. And I feel like this Eminem is so, like the Eminem now is just a legendary guy. You know, he's one of the best rappers in the world, you know what I'm saying, ever. But skill-wise now, the ability to compete right now and compete back then when he had the beef with Machine Gun Kelly, I just don't feel like, you know what I'm saying, he filled the glass. I feel like Machine Gun Kelly came out of nowhere with a dope ass, with the kill shot shit, and was actually lyrically crazy on that motherfucker. And Machine Gun Kelly can actually really fucking rap, you know what I'm saying? Aside from, you know, what he's doing outside of rap music and the punk rock and doing what he's doing, like that's, you know, his business. But as far as like rap, I mean, you got a white kid from Cleveland, you know what I'm saying? The hood, like he go for what he go for. So Eminem, same way from Detroit. Seems like all his homies is black, you know what I'm saying? So we get it. But yeah, in that particular beef, man, I gotta get out with Machine Gun Kelly.
If you were to say who won that rap beef, Eminem or MGK, who would you say?
Well, I would say that, well, first of all, I was the only person on the planet talking to both of them on the phone at that time, right? So I'll just say that. So this is where I'm at on the Yelawolf side. I'm sitting here with a record with MGK. I'm signed to Shady. I have an album coming out, and that comes out. And we've already committed to a video shoot. And we know this is a huge song. So, you know, when I heard the disc, the Marshall dropped, and then I FaceTime MGK immediately, and he was just doing this, just shaking his head, and I was like, all right, man, go ahead, you know, like, I mean, not that he needed my permission or was even asking for my fucking permission. He was just like, I'm not going, dog. I was like, well, you know, we got a song together, man. I don't know how this is gonna affect what you and I do. I don't know what the fuck to do right now. And so he put that line in the diss, "Don't take me off of Yelawolf's album," which when I called Marshall and I was like, man, like, I didn't see this coming, man. Like, you know, like, Kels and I, you know, like, that's my homie, but, you know, I would really love to see this record come out. He's like, no, it's got to come out. People need to hear that. So, like, it was a boss move on Marshall's part too, you know? You know, as far as who won the battle, you know, it's not a battle, it's a war. You know what I'm saying? And like, it's like Kels has shifted his career into a new path, you know? And maybe that was a moment that sparked that, you know? Marshall's been winning for many, many years. You know what I mean? Been winning. And I'm glad to see Kels is winning in his own path right now. You know, I don't have an opinion about the battle, man. I'm not a battle rap guy, to be honest. Like that one disc, that's the only disc that I've ever put out my entire career. But it was founded with something. You know, I had like a story behind it. It wasn't just a random shot. And but you know, picking out who won, I mean, that's silly. That's not my MO, man. I know that Kels is my homie, you know what I mean? And I got all the love and respect for Marshall, you know? If anyone if anyone should not be asked, it's me.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, come on, dog. Don't put me on the cross.
Okay, fair enough. I had to ask that. That's my job.
I appreciate it.
Okay, so you dropped Trial by Fire in 2017 on Shady Interscope. It debuts 42 on Billboard. You know, it's not what Love Story did, but it's a solid outing. How'd you feel about that album?
Trial by Fire, I probably think is the most important hip hop country album that's ever been created. And you know what I mean? Like, we were way, way, way ahead of the curve with some of those ideas, way too advanced. And but it's probably next to Love Story, creatively, probably the second most important most important record I've done thus far. I mean, you kidding me? Me, Winona Judd. I mean, come on, man. Like, there's records on Trial by Fire that set the standard, in my opinion, of if you're gonna blend hip hop and country, that's how you do it. And you know, and I went through hell making that record, and then I had to go live it. And you know, like, Daylight, that single off of Daylight is like, in that video, Shadows, Joshua Headley, right after I did Shadows with Joshua Headley signed to Jack White. You know, there was a paradigm shift in Nashville with that record. And I didn't expect it to go anywhere. So number 42 is chill. Cause I knew when I put that record out, I was like, yeah, this is for me. This is for me and my fans. This is like setting the record straight with how I would do this. Cause all this country rap shit was buzzing around Nashville. And I felt like it was being so disrespected and done with no, I don't know, no regard for hip hop, no regard for country. It was just like, there's no one to set the standard. And I did feel like it was my job, like literally. I was like, I'm the only one that can do this. I'm the only one that can do this correctly in Nashville, Tennessee, for sure. Correctly. Without it being hokey, without it being wannabe, you know what I mean? Dude. Yeah. So I think it's an important record. Definitely an important record in my career. But you know, I think that if you're diving into what country and hip hop could be, you know, there it is. You know, and then you know the king of it, you know what I mean? In my opinion, Struggle Jennings. You know, he took the reins on it, man, and he's and just going crazy. But yeah, I appreciate you asking me about Trial by Fire, man. Appreciate it.
Okay, and then in 2019, he dropped Trunk Music 3. And this is the final project on Shady. Is there a reason why you went independent after this as opposed to kind of staying in the Shady Interscope arena?
Nah, we fulfilled our agreement. You know, like we didn't it's not like, it's like we paid our dues, man. I paid my dues up there, you know, and I gave them great albums, great music. And it's only natural. It's a natural progression, you know, to get out and, you know, become my own boss. That's just how it is. You know what I mean? That's how it happens for most artists. You know, you grow your wings, man. And, you know, time to fly, basically. And, you know, I had built up Slim American to be a brand for all those years. And I knew that we had a solid foundation to go build it up, you know? And we did. And we're continuing to do that, you know? So, and I wanted my last record I thought it only right that if I came in with Trump music, I'm leaving with Trump music. So that's why we chose to drop the final Trump Music 3 with Shady.
Well,
and
yeah, and that debuted at number
too.
28. So that actually did better than Trial by Fire.
Well, yeah, it's a hip hop project, naturally. You know what I mean? It's, you know, it's got fucking, that's always going to under the Shady umbrella, especially, you know, hip hop. And also the beef that Marshall and MGK just had. People wanted to peep in and hear what I was going to say about that. And overall, that's a great hip hop project as well. You know, there's some bangers on there. And yeah, I'm proud of that. Proud of that project.
Well, and then that same year, you dropped Ghetto Cowboy independently. And that did number 76 on Billboard, which is, for an independent project, pretty impressive.
I've never heard these numbers before, Vlad. Do you know that?
Okay.
You know that's the kind of artist I am. I don't give a fuck. I don't put out I don't put out music to follow numbers. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, my manager, J. Jones, he surprised me with a Love Story plaque. I got plaques for a bunch of shit that I don't have. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I appreciate the business side of it and the number side, but like, and it doesn't bother me hearing this, by the way. Like, I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. I just want you to know on everything, I had no idea. But go ahead. Number 76, independent.
Yeah.
For Ghetto Cowboy. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. What does that even mean? What is number 76? What does it mean? What equates to the numbers like that? How many you sell or whatever? Or streams?
Well, how many you sell based
anymore.
on what everything else. But I mean, what it really means, I think most importantly, is that there's literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of music projects that come out in America, you know, every week, from independent, major, whatever else. And to be in the top 200 out of everything that ever drops, I think is impressive. It just shows where your fan base is. And it shows that people support you, even if you don't have a huge marketing push and you don't have the major label behind you and, you know, pulling all the strings and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, major labels do have a lot of pull, man. You know, there's a lot of power to
Yeah.
a major label. And trust me, I did know the difference and did see and feel the difference in the release. You know what I mean? Like how it was released, what kind of push was there, what kind of support was there, what kind of support was not, you know? And shit, it was a new game to figure out. So, but you know, we're successful in that we have handled it, you know, and we keep getting better and better at knowing how to do this. And that was as far as like structuring a team to release that was tough, man. You know, because I actually for the first time had to dive into that side of it and pick out, you know, help to hand pick each person. So, but you know, it's like putting, you know, up until now, it's like we've put those people in that process through a sifter, you know what I mean? And what's good stays, what isn't falls through the holes, basically. I forget sometimes about these albums. Ghetto Cowboy, man, like whoa, that's a monster. That's a really good record.
In 2021, the last album you put out, Mud Mouth, you said this would be your last rap album and you're going to move on to rock music.
Yeah.
Is that still the case?
I didn't say it would be my last rap album. I said it'll be my last hip hop project for a while. I'm going to get focused on rock and roll. So, and that's what I did. You know, I fucking put out Mud Mouth, went out, shot a movie to it in Mexico City during COVID, by the way. Hustlers. And that movie will be coming out this next year, hopefully. It's taking like we did hand drawn animation throughout the movie, kind of like Roger Rabbit, like literally hand drawn. So it's taking over a year to do that, 2 years. So and it's fucking epic too, man. It's shot in Mexico and outside of Mexico City and within the city, and it's all about an acid trip. You know, spiritual life and death. So it's pretty sick. But it's incredible visually, you know? And we took it there. Major motion picture stunts and shit, like crazy. But yeah, after Mud Mouth, you know, I had already set seed with Shooter Jennings to do a rock and roll project, you know? We didn't know what it was gonna sound like, but we did know we wanted a rock and roll album, and how to do that we had no clue. But he sent me an acoustic guitar track, just a loop, and I wrote and recorded something under my stairs actually, and sent it back to him, and he was just blown away. And I was surprised how surprised he was, but he was like, "Oh my God, dude, if this is the first thing we do, no telling what we're about to do." And so we, at that point, booked studio time at Sunset Sound in LA. And I just realigned my focus to do a rock and roll project, you know? And it was due to me personally. All the way back to Stereo, classic hip hop, tribute to classic hip hop, a hip hop tribute to classic rock. All the way back to Stereo, I needed that. I needed that creative. I needed to hear myself in that world and to prove to myself that I could do it and do it right. And shit, man. We did the damn thing for sure.
Well, Yelawolf, man, it's a hell of a story that started from the very bottom. And I remember doing the interviews with you when you first got signed, and as you were trying to figure out your way and so forth. But the one thing that is exactly the same now as with the conversations we had 13, 14 years ago was that you were going to stay true to your art the whole time. You weren't going to deviate. You weren't going to go with the trends. You weren't going to switch up your look. You were going to do the kind of music that you wanted to do. And I remember you even said something, because I remember this always struck out to me. You said, like, I know I'll be successful eventually because all the other artists, they understand what I'm doing. Eventually the fans will as well. And I'm not worried about that. I'm just going to keep doing what I do, and eventually it'll catch up. And eventually it did catch up, because I think Love Story hadn't come out yet and so forth. So you didn't have any platinum songs or, big albums at that point. But you stayed true to who you are, and here we are in 2024. A lot of people are trying to do what you've been doing right now. So artistically, man, I really salute you to what you've accomplished, because not a lot of artists do that. A lot of artists will go with whatever's hot at the time. Okay, if it's snap music, I'm going to do snap music. Okay, if it's country music, okay, I guess I'll try to do country music. But you've always done the same thing. And when you look at your style of music now, it's very similar to what you started out with. So, man, listen, congratulations on going through what you went through, starting at the very bottom, being homeless, trying to figure it out, multiple record deals, to having a solid fan base, having it work out independently, and continuously doing projects the whole time, and with more projects on the way.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Of course, man. And I got to see it. I got to see it almost from the very beginning. And, appreciate you sitting down with me, man. And, looking forward to what you got coming up next.
Yeah, War Story. War Story is the answer to Love Story. I've got both the same producers. We did a Trump Music, we got a double album, double hip hop album, Trump Music Forever, which is the 4th Trump Music, and then the Michael Wayne album. The Trump Music record I did with Willpower, same producer I did the original Trump Music with, and Malay. Those two producers who created Love Story with me. And yeah, man. All I could say is get ready. They better get ready for me, Vlad. Because, as far as hip hop goes, man, like, peeking back in has been, well, when I did peek back in after that rock and roll album, what I did with Shooter, it fueled me. I missed hip hop. I missed rapping. You know what I mean? And we did great with that record. We went out and opened up for Leonard Skinner. We played the Grammy Museum. Got all these critical accolades. All the things that came along with that record has been beautiful. And I felt like I got that off my chest, but it made me hungry to rap again. And this is definitely my best hip hop record to date by far. So we've been releasing singles. I think we're on our 3rd right now. We got 2 more singles coming out. 3?
Yep. 3 more.
3 more singles.
Before the album, and the 3rd after the album.
1 single with Jelly Roll, Trailer in the Sky. Another single is Flashlight. And then finally, the last single that's going to drop with the album is called Legend. Or That's How You Make a Legend. All big music videos and all indie, man. Slim American, 1 RPM.
That's what it is, man. Congratulations on your success, and
Thanks, man.
Really the determination and hard work that got you to this point, man. I know you got a lot of dope shit coming up. Can't wait to see it.
Appreciate it, brother.
Until next time.
Yes, sir.
Peace.
Later.